So welcome back to lesson 3 of our online course, Facebook Posting Strategy. And we really want to help you develop this strategy, a strategy that fits your schedule and that fits your church and that fits your community. Today, we want to talk about how to build and brand your Facebook page and group. So how to put together what we've already talked about. We've talked about the purpose and what we want to post. Now let's kind of dive in and let's talk about building these pages and groups and how to name them and how to use them and how to get people connected to them. So let's kind of review where we've been. We've talked about this framework that's so important, that we create conversations that build relationships that lead to challenging people to take their next steps in their faith. And we're evenly posting about all 3 of these things. And that's important, that we use our post to do all 3 of these things and divide them equally. A third are creating conversations, a third are building relationships, and a third are challenging people to take their next step. It's easy to get out of balance on those, so just constantly evaluating how we're doing. Let's talk about how people typically use social media. What do you do when you get on Facebook? If you're on your phone, you scroll, you see something interesting, you maybe read it, you maybe watch the video. If you find something you doesn't catch your attention, you just go right past it. Instagram, the same way, right? You just scroll until you see something that's interesting. Our goal then is to when people are kind of going through their social media feeds, is to create something interesting enough that grabs their attention, that causes them to stop what they're doing and look at what you've posted, to watch it, to read it, to laugh about it, to post about it, to like, to share, to comment. We want to create engaging posts, and it's not for the sake of getting likes and getting follows and getting views. It's for the point of we want to see lives changed by the power of the gospel. And so our content is different from just a social media influencer. Our content has the power to change lives. Why? Because it's based on the Word of God. Why? Because we're churches who believe that Jesus still changes lives today. And so that's why it's so important that we use the tools that we have at our disposal and really use them to help people learn more about following Jesus. And so you can do that with an image, you can do that with a video, you can do it with a post, you can do it with a meme. There's all sorts of ways you can get people's attention. In the marketing world, they're all about hooking you, and they actually kind of have this whole marketing terminology called the hook, story, offer method, right? The hook is your first 2 sentences. You've got to grab them, you've got to hook them in and show them why what you're sharing is so important. Then you tell a story, and this story can be about your personal experience, and you tell that story. Then you share an offer on how to make the sale, how to make the conversion. That's marketing terminology. In the church world, we take that same methodology, though, and we say it's the hook story challenge, right? It's the hook. We want to hook people in and grab their interest and grab their attention. And then we want to share a story. We want to, are you tracking with me? It's the creative conversation. It's the hook. We want to build a relationship. That's the story. And then the challenge is, right, leading them to take the next step of faith. And so your challenge is your call to action. Your challenge is asking them to sign up, to get involved, to pray, to give. Whatever it is, your challenge is then to move them from the sidelines as a spectator to move them into a participant in what you're doing. And so that really is what we're doing with this whole course, is learning how to create engaging content. Let's talk about Facebook terminology a little bit. And this is just real basics, but let's make sure we're all on the same page. In Facebook, you have profiles, pages, and groups. That may change at some point in the future, but right now we've got profiles, pages, and groups. Let's kind of break down each one. Your profile is your account. It has to be a real person. And so do not create a profile for your business. It hits me, it's kind of strange when I get a friend request from a business. I'm like, businesses can't do that. That's for people. And if Facebook catches you, and they will eventually, they will remove that profile. And so this is really important that you have to, profiles have to be real people. Let me kind of share some caution tales for you as well. You cannot, for your church, create a fake user account for access to your page. So you can't have it like our church is Cornerstone. So you can't have it like Cornerstone Tech Group. Be a person, and then everybody uses that same account to log into your page or to use it for your live stream. If Facebook finds that one of your accounts is a kind of a fake account or a proxy account like that, they will actually, they can lock down your page where you don't have access to it. Why? Because you've had a fake user profile associated to it as an admin or as an editor. So don't do that. It's also just for your information, not that any of you are doing this, but it's also against Facebook's terms of service to have a joint account, to have a husband and wife kind of account. I see a lot of people do that. Just realize if Facebook ever wants to, because it's against their terms of service, they can remove that account, they can shut you down, lock it out. And so Facebook, when you are using their service, you have to play by their rules. It doesn't mean we always like it or we always agree with it, but if we're using it, that's kind of the rules we have to go by. So that's what a profile is. Your pages, as we mentioned earlier, that's like your front window. That's people driving by your church looking in. That's giving them their initial impression on who your church is and on what you're about. And so your page is the place where you can share content from your church for the world to see. It's public. Anybody can see it at any time. And so that's what a page is. A Facebook group then is a collection of individuals in your church. Groups are a little bit different. I mentioned this is inviting people in. This is your living room. This is your chance for people to have conversations with each other. This is for interaction. And so instead of this is not us pushing information out, this is for us facilitating conversations in a group setting. And so that's kind of the three things. Let's dive into Facebook pages. Again, your Facebook page, it's your main front window for your church. It's where people driving by are going to learn more about your church. People scrolling through their feed, they're going to see it. They're going to hear about your church a little bit. So how many pages do you have for your church? I've seen some churches that have a page for their church, a page for their youth ministry, a page for their worship team, a page for their children's ministry, a page for their seniors ministry. Here's what I recommend. I think your church should have one page. The only time I would say maybe you need more than one page if you have more than one location in different areas. But if you are, for your church, if you are in one location, you need one page because you have one audience. There's no use in having multiple pages because it's just going to dilute what you post and less people will see it. So one main page for your group, for your church. You can have multiple groups linked back to that page, and we'll get there in a minute. But we want to simplify our online presence. We don't want to complicate it. And so you don't want to divide your main audience. So one page will give you the ability then to do advertising, to do live streaming, to post information. And again, I mentioned organically, only 10 to 15% of people that have liked your page will see the content anyway. And so if you're going to be doing advertising, you're going to be promoting posts and boosting posts and doing targeted ads. And there's no use having multiple pages because that just means you have to do that on every one of those pages. One main page is what you really need. Pages are for a broad crowd. You don't have to get specific on your page. And so again, you're posting content. You think about this rule of thirds that we've shared. A third of your posts are creating conversation. A third of your posts are building relationships. A third of your posts then are challenging people to take next steps. You can post a lot on your page. If you ask me how frequently you post on your page, I would tell you at least once a day, but if not, it's much better to post multiple times a day. Just be careful that you don't post back to back to back, because those are the posts that get buried a little bit by Facebook, because they're looking to see, when you make a post, they're waiting to see, will people interact with this post? If they do, they'll keep sharing it. They'll keep showing it to more and more people. If people don't interact, then they kind of just forget about it and it quits showing up on people's pages. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. So you can post about many different topics. You can have posts on your church Facebook page about your children's ministry, about your youth ministry, about your worship, about your seniors ministry, about service opportunities. You can have posts about, again, thinking through those categories we mentioned, creating conversations and building relationships and challenging people to take next step. But you can have posts about a lot of different things on your Facebook page. The first impressions are really important here, and your goal is to get more and more people connected to your church and ultimately to Christ. So it's important to build the number of likes on your page. It's important to get the people in your church to like your page. It's important, or to follow your page now. Facebook just changed that recently, where it's not likes now, it's follows. So again, things change constantly, but now Facebook is wanting people to follow pages. So you follow them, and so you want to get people in your church to follow your page. You want to get people in your community to follow your page. So you want your people in your church to invite their friends. One of the quickest ways to build your Facebook page is to share content that people want to share. All right, you create content and people see it, man, I want to share this. And when you create that engaging content, they're going to share it. People are going to like your page. And then the people in your church, your key leaders and influencers, ask them personally, will you invite your friends to like this page? And just they can go through and invite them to like it, and that works wonders to build a page following. So that's what your Facebook page. There's some details on your Facebook page. You need a cover photo. You need a profile photo. You need to name your page. You don't have to get fancy. You don't have to get cute. You don't have to get clever. Your Facebook page name needs to be the name of your church. I would even recommend possibly putting the city name in that as well, especially if your church name is a common church name. So if people are searching and they see it pop up, they immediately say, oh, that's the church I'm trying to find. And so you need a good description. You need a description that includes, when you go into your About section on your page, you can put service times, you can put your address, you can put a little bit of who you are and what your church is like. All of that goes in your Facebook About section. And then as you make posts on that, you're using that posting framework that we've already discussed. But that's your Facebook page. Let's move on now to your Facebook group. Now here's the big question. I said you should only have one Facebook page. How many groups can you have? You can have as many groups as you need. Here's what I recommend. And I would recommend you have one main group for the attenders of your church. One big group, and that's just a group that you invite everybody into, that you announce on Sunday mornings. You kind of promote a lot. You invite people into that group to be connected. And then you have multiple other groups for smaller ministries. Your youth ministry may have a group. Your worship team may have a group. Your elder team or your deacons may have a group. You can do it. You can have multiple groups. Some of them, and you have different access settings. You can have public groups. You can have private groups, and you can have hidden groups. Here's what I recommend. I recommend for the groups in your church that they're all private or hidden. Why is that? Well, if you want to create a safe place for people to have conversations, a private group is the way to go, where they have to be approved to be in the group. You don't want people just that are looking for an argument, looking for a fight, just to come in and constantly be creating disruptions in your church, right? You just think about that for a minute. There needs to be some sense of safety where people can share things and not think about a small group. This is the best way to explain it. If someone comes to a small group, if you've ever been part of a small group, you've always heard what is shared in a group stays in the group. The same thing applies to Facebook. If you have a public group, then people can share that anywhere, and they're going to be hesitant to open up and share. In a private group, people cannot share that content outside of the group. So I would recommend your group be private. The private groups for your ministry make a lot of sense. If you have a children's ministry group or a ministry leaders group or a youth group in Facebook, all of those can be private as well. And then hidden groups are really good for your smaller teams. Our church leadership team, our elder team, we have a Facebook group that is hidden. It just has just a few members, just the people. And we use it to post prayer requests. We use it to vote. We use it to share, hey, do you want to meet on Wednesday night? Do you want to meet on Tuesday night? We've got this coming up. Here's the budget. Here's a file we want to share. You can share all of that stuff inside the group and use it to communicate throughout the week. It works really well. But that's kind of we don't want that information public, obviously. So it's a private group, invitation only, but that works really well for your leadership groups. So let's kind of go back to the big group for your church. I think this is important, and most churches don't have this. Most churches are missing one of the best opportunities to create community through an online tool, and it is a Facebook group. This is so important, especially when you cannot meet in person like we've experienced this past year in 2020. A lot of churches weren't meeting in person. This is a perfect opportunity to use a Facebook group to build that community when you're not able to meet in person. I think about the Facebook groups I'm a part of, and the biggest advantage I see is I get to choose what type of groups I'm a part of. If I'm part of a group and I don't like the way the conversations are going, I don't like the arguments, I don't like the tone that people have, I just leave the group. But the groups I really enjoy, I'm part of a lot of church technology groups, a lot of church leadership groups, a lot of pastor groups, and a lot of grilling and smoking groups, okay? Those things may not go together, but it's my passions, right? It's what I enjoy. And whatever my passion is for the day or the time or the season of life I'm in, I'm finding Facebook groups to join in and learn more and really make connections. My wife used to give me a hard time. She's like, do you really know that person, or are they just a fake friend from Facebook? I'm like, wait a minute here. Some of those fake friends from Facebook I've gotten to know in person. But the online was the first step into building a connection, to building a relationship, to getting to know someone. It's been the first step to developing a friendship with people who may live in another state or another area. I feel like now I have a whole network of friends, some that I've met in person, some that I've never met in person, but people who I've developed friendships with through Facebook. And that's what groups can do. They can help you connect with other people who share common interests and goals as yourself. And so when you think about that, I really fully believe that social media, what we need more than anything is we need more content that is affirming, that is positive, that is lifting up, that is edifying, instead of tearing down. We live in a time right now where our nation is divided, and I fully believe a divided nation needs a united church. A church that's united on the mission that God has given us. And so if we have something to share, let's share it. Let's share it in a way that is winsome and holy and that reveals the fruit of the Spirit in our life. And let's do that so that people can see Jesus in us and through us. And so when you think about that, your goal, we seek advice, we share prayer requests, we support each other, we celebrate the good things that are happening, we share about what's happening in the life of our church. And the thing about pages and groups, pages are all about what we push out as a church. This is what we're doing. We're creating that conversation. It's all about, we're trying to draw people in. That's what a page does. A group is different. It's about the church stepping back and saying, we want you guys to interact. We want you to post. And we'll facilitate that. We'll give you a safe place to do that. We'll create the guardrails to keep things on the road, to keep things on the right path. But we want to give you the opportunity to create those conversations with each other. And so what's on your mind? What are your questions? And so a Facebook page, we're generating the content as a church. a Facebook group, we're inviting the people in our church to generate the content. So it's a big difference really between the two. So what would you name your group? This is kind of important because it can get confusing on Facebook if you have a page and a group the same name. I see a lot of people make this mistake and you're like, okay, and you don't even know, you post on one and you're like, well, no one, you get confused. At our church, our page is Cornerstone Community Church. Our group is Connect at Cornerstone. That's kind of we're kind of giving it a name to tell people what we want them to do, right? To connect at Cornerstone. I've seen like some other examples from large churches like Elevation Church in Charlotte. They have their Elevation Church page, but then they have their official Elevation Church eFam. Their eFamily is what they call their group. So their group is their eFam. And then you'll see a lot of churches, they'll have the name of their church as their page and then the name of the church online. And they'll add online on it, and that's their group. And so it's their online campus, or they'll name their group as if they have multiple campuses, they'll kind of sort them out by different campuses. So they'll have one page for the big church and then multiple groups by the different campuses. This is a time where you don't want to get too out there, but you do want to kind of think about this group. What are you trying to accomplish with it? And you can name it something then to encourage people to do it. And so for us, that connect was what we were wanting to accomplish. We wanted people to connect with God and with each other. So Connect at Cornerstone was a perfect fit. And so we've used that terminology. And so when we share, hey, are you on Connect at Cornerstone? That's what we're talking about. That's our Facebook group. And so it has its own branding, its own identity that's associated with our church, but it's different from our Facebook page. And so when you think about that, I've already talked about public, private, and hidden. You can also, making those decisions about that. Again, I recommend private for your groups. And when you do that, you can, in order for people to be added to your group, you can have them answer membership questions. I want to stop here and kind of explain that a little bit. What this is if someone wants to be part of your group, you can require them to answer questions before they join. This is a way that you kind of sort through people who are not real people, right? The bots that are out there, the people in foreign countries that are just, misusing Facebook for financial gain. This is to really see if they're a real person. And so you can ask questions. You can ask 3 questions. You can ask questions like, do you attend our church? Or what would you like to get out of joining? Or do you know Jesus as Lord? Or would you be interested in learning more about that? That's a great question, right? You could ask, what's your email address? That's a great way. And what's your email address? And do we have permission to add you to our mailing list? Wow, I mean, those questions then, when you ask those questions, or where do you live, or those types, what you do is all of a sudden you start finding out more about this person, where you can develop that relationship, where they can be even added into your church management software, where you can follow up with them through email or texting, and so this is kind of a way that you can use it to make that connection, to really find out who they are and what they like, and so really. You've got 3 questions. You can ask them anything. Do remember one thing to take note of is when they answer those questions and when they show up to be added to your group, that's the only time you're going to see those answers. So you do have to copy and paste those answers so that you don't lose their answers when they join your group. But I encourage you to do that. The other thing that you can do is you can have a list of rules for your group. I would encourage you to do this. That book, From Social Media to Social Ministry, has some suggested rules. Things like the health of our Facebook campus culture is important to all of us, and we need your help to keep it positive. These are things you're asking people to agree to. So participate in a kind and collaborative way, and exercise respect and consideration while here, or avoid making posts or comments that could offend a brother or sister. In other words, don't create an argument. Don't create a fight, right? Avoid private messaging other members to demean or harass or to be unkind. This is not just on Facebook. I had somebody at one time ask in our church, like with wanting contact information of other people in the church. And the reason they were wanting it is so they could write them a letter and confront them and complain about something. I'm like, no, that's not how you do it, right? And the same thing, people, you don't do things like that. You respect the privacy of other members of the group, so you don't share the post in this group outside of the group. You don't screenshot them. You don't share them. And then it's something like, we have the right as a church to, if you're not following these rules, we can remove you from the group. We can mute you. We can delete your comment. We can delete your post. Why? Because we are creating a safe place for conversations. We want to facilitate a place where people can learn and grow and ask sincere questions, right? And so that means that sometimes we have to learn and make those decisions about how to moderate content, whether we should allow this post or remove it, or sometimes we have to follow up with people and say, hey, that's not really the purpose of this group. And so maybe one of your rules is, hey, no political posts in this group. We can talk about issues, but not politics. Maybe, there's just so many things that can be divisive in our culture today. You've got to figure out what is it you want your church to focus on inside of your group. And I think that's really important that you do that. Finally, you can link groups back to your page. You can have linked groups, so when people, they can see that the group is linked back to the page can comment on the group. So there's some linking options there that they show up. If you go to your page, you'll see these groups are linked so that you know that it's an official group of the church. I think that's important just for people to know what it is and kind of where to find it. So hopefully that's helpful. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of details in this. But now here's what you've got to do. You've got to go and look at your current social media accounts. You've got to look at your Facebook page, your Facebook group if you have one, and what settings do you have and how can you make them better? If you have multiple pages, is it time to consolidate them into one page? If you have multiple groups, how are they set up? How are they linked? Do you have the right settings? Are they private, public? How can you create membership questions? How can you create rules? Do you need to change the name of your group? Those are the decisions that you need to make right now, and you need to evaluate, and you need to come up with a strategy for how you want to use what you already have. And so hopefully this has been helpful. We're going to keep going. We've got 2 more lessons to go in this course. But we're taking things one step at a time, and we're learning this Facebook posting strategy to create conversations, to build relationships, so we challenge people to take their next steps. Thanks for joining in again for this lesson today.